I can't believe you, Zara. I slave away at work all day to come home to this slop? Ethan hurled his plate at the wall, shattering it. I flinched, my voice quivering. I'm sorry. I had a migraine today, and... Excuses, excuses. That's all I ever hear from you, Ethan sneered, his face contorted with rage. You're lucky I even married you, considering how plain and unremarkable you are. His words cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. I met Ethan 3 years ago when I started working as a receptionist at his law firm. Despite my quiet nature and average looks, he pursued me relentlessly, showering me with compliments and grand romantic gestures. Swept up in the whirlwind of his charm, I fell head over heels. Our courtship was a fairy tale, but reality set in soon after we exchanged vows. Ethan convinced me to quit my job, insisting that he wanted me to focus on being the perfect housewife. I agreed, eager to please him and build our life together. But 3 months into our marriage, Ethan's true colors began to show. He nitpicked every aspect of my homemaking, from the way I folded his laundry to the seasoning in my cooking. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Honestly, Zara, sometimes I wonder why I bother coming home at all, Ethan sighed dramatically, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. You can't even handle the most basic tasks. I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I'm trying my best, Ethan. It's just been a difficult day and... Oh, spare me the pity party, he scoffed, rolling his eyes. You don't know what a difficult day is. You sit around this apartment all day, doing God knows what, while I'm out there busting my ass to provide for us. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. It was Ethan's idea for me to quit my job in the first place, yet he never missed an opportunity to throw my unemployment in my face. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my frayed nerves. I appreciate everything you do for us, Ethan. I'll try harder, I promise. You better, he warned, his tone icy. I didn't marry you for your scintillating conversation, Zara. The least you can do is keep the house in order and put a decent meal on the table. With that, he stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest as silent sobs racked my body. How had my life come to this? What happened to the charming, attentive man I fell in love with? As I sat there, surrounded by the shards of the shattered plate, I couldn't help but feel like they were a metaphor for my marriage. What once seemed so perfect and promising was now broken beyond repair, and I was left to pick up the pieces, alone and disillusioned. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's verbal abuse only escalated. He seemed to take sadistic pleasure in tearing me down, finding fault in every aspect of my existence. Zara, have you gained weight? He asked one evening, eyeing me critically as I set the table for dinner. You're looking a bit softer these days. I glanced down at my body, suddenly self-conscious. I don't think so. I've been eating the same as always. Ethan smirked, a cruel glint in his eye. Well, maybe that's the problem. You're not exactly active, are you? Sitting around the house all day, it's no wonder you're turning into a blob. His words stung, but I tried to brush them off. I'll start going for walks in the evenings, I offered, hoping to appease him. Don't bother, he scoffed. It's not like it'll make much difference. You'll always be plain old Zara, no matter how much you try to improve yourself. I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to defend myself. I knew from experience that arguing with Ethan only made things worse. As I served him his meal, he took one bite and grimaced. Christ, Zara, is this what you call dinner? It's like eating cardboard. I followed the recipe exactly, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I thought you liked chicken parmesan. I like it when it's cooked properly, he retorted, shoving the plate away. This is inedible. Honestly, I don't know why I keep you around. You're useless as a wife and homemaker. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I'm sorry, I whispered, gathering up his plate. I'll make something else. Don't bother, he sneered, standing up from the table. I've lost my appetite. I'm going out. He grabbed his coat and keys, slamming the front door behind him. I knew he was likely heading to a bar or to meet up with one of his colleagues. It wasn't unusual for him to stay out late, leaving me alone with my thoughts and insecurities. As I cleaned up the kitchen, my mind wandered to happier times. I thought about my old job at the law firm, how fulfilling it had been to contribute and feel valued. I missed the camaraderie of my coworkers, the sense of purpose I felt every day. But Ethan had convinced me to give all that up. "I make more than enough money for both of us," he'd said. "I want you to focus on making our home a haven, a place where I can relax and unwind after a long day at work." At the time, it had sounded romantic, the idea of being a devoted housewife. But now I realized how much I had sacrificed for a man who didn't appreciate me, who seemed to delight in my misery. Late that night, as I lay in bed alone, I heard Ethan stumble in, reeking of alcohol and perfume. He collapsed onto the bed beside me, snoring loudly, not even bothering to undress. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, a hollow feeling in my chest. Was this what my life had become? A series of endless days, catering to a man who treated me like dirt with no escape in sight? I knew I should leave, that I deserved better than this. But a part of me still clung to the hope that Ethan would change, that he'd go back to being the charming, loving man I'd married. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come, and my illusions were about to be shattered in the most devastating way possible. It was a typical Sunday afternoon, and I was doing laundry, trying to keep myself busy and distracted from the constant tension that hung over our household. As I emptied Ethan's pockets before tossing his pants into the washing machine, his phone tumbled out, landing on the floor with a clatter. I picked it up, intending to place it on the counter, when a message flashed across the screen. It was from Valerie, Ethan's secretary at the law firm. I hesitated for a moment, knowing I shouldn't pry, but something compelled me to open the message. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Valerie, scantily clad and posed provocatively, accompanied by a text that left little to the imagination. "Can't wait for round 2, baby. Last night was incredible." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands shook as I scrolled through the message history, each exchange more explicit than the last. It was clear that Ethan and Valerie were having an affair, and from the looks of it, it had been going on for months. Rage and betrayal coursed through my veins. How could he do this to me? After everything I'd sacrificed for him, all the abuse I'd endured, he had the audacity to cheat on me with his secretary. I heard the front door open and Ethan's footsteps in the hallway. I stormed out of the laundry room, his phone clutched in my hand, ready to confront him. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, thrusting the phone in his face. Ethan's eyes widened for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. "What are you doing snooping through my phone, Zara? That's private." "Private?" I laughed bitterly. "You're screwing your secretary, and you have the nerve to talk about privacy." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what it looks like. It's just harmless flirting, nothing more." "Don't lie to me," I screamed, hot tears streaming down my face. "I saw the messages, the photos. How long has this been going on?" Ethan's face hardened, his eyes turning cold. "Fine, you want the truth? Yes, I've been sleeping with Valerie, but can you blame me? Look at you, Zara. You're a pathetic excuse for a wife. I only married you because I thought you'd be easy to control, but even that's proving to be more trouble than it's worth." His words hit me like a slap in the face. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. "You never loved me," I whispered, the realization dawning on me. This whole marriage was a sham. Ethan smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Oh, don't act so surprised. Did you really think someone like me would genuinely fall for someone like you? You were a means to an end, Zara, a convenient little wife to keep the house clean and warm my bed at night, but even you couldn't get that right." I felt like I was going to be sick. The man I had loved, the man I had given up everything for, was nothing more than a manipulative, cheating bastard. "I'm done," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and grief. "I'm leaving, and I'm filing for divorce." Ethan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Go ahead. But remember, Zara, you're nothing without me. You have no job, no skills, no prospects. Good luck finding someone else to put up with your pathetic existence." I didn't bother responding. I grabbed a suitcase and started packing, throwing in clothes and essentials with trembling hands. I couldn't spend another minute in this house, with this man who had shattered my heart and my illusions. As I walked out the door, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, tinged with the bitterness of betrayal. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but anything was better than staying in a marriage built on lies and manipulation. It was time to pick up the pieces of my life and start anew, far away from Ethan and the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. With my marriage in shambles and my heart in pieces, I found myself on my sister's doorstep, suitcase in hand. She took one look at my tear-stained face and pulled me into a tight hug, ushering me inside without a word. Over the next few days, I poured out my story to her, recounting every painful detail of Ethan's betrayal and the emotional abuse I had endured. She listened patiently, offering comfort and support, her anger at Ethan's actions simmering just beneath the surface. "You can stay here as long as you need," she assured me. "We'll get you back on your feet, Zara. You're stronger than you know." With her encouragement, I started looking for work, determined to regain my independence. I landed a job as a waitress at a high-end bistro, the kind of place Ethan and his colleagues would often frequent for business lunches. At first, I was nervous, worried that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the fast-paced environment and demanding customers. But as the weeks passed, I found myself thriving in the role, my natural warmth and attentiveness shining through. The regular customers began to take notice, complimenting me on my service and friendly demeanor. "You always manage to brighten my day, Zara," one elderly gentleman said, patting my hand as I refilled his coffee. "You have a real gift for making people feel welcome." Their kind words were a balm to my battered self-esteem, slowly helping me rebuild the confidence Ethan had systematically torn down. I started to see myself in a new light, not as the worthless, unlovable woman he had made me believe I was, but as someone with value and purpose. One evening, as I was clearing tables after a particularly busy shift, my manager pulled me aside. "Zara, I just wanted to let you know how impressed I am with your work," he said, smiling warmly. "You've become an integral part of our team, and the customers adore you. Keep up the great work." I thanked him, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly good at something, that I had a place where I belonged. As I walked home that night, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come in such a short time. Just a few months ago, I had been a broken shell of a woman, convinced that I was nothing without Ethan. But now, I was standing on my own 2 feet, building a life for myself that had nothing to do with him. When I arrived at my sister's apartment, I found a large envelope waiting for me on the kitchen table. My heart sank as I recognized Ethan's handwriting, and with trembling fingers I tore it open. Inside were divorce papers, already signed by Ethan. A note was attached, his words dripping with disdain. "I've made it easy for you, Zara. Just sign on the dotted line, and you'll be free of me. Not that anyone else would want you, but at least you won't be my problem anymore." I stared at the papers, a mix of emotions swirling within me. Relief that I could finally sever ties with the man who had caused me so much pain. Anger at the callous way he dismissed our marriage, and a tiny lingering sense of sadness for the love I had once believed we shared. But as I picked up the pen and signed my name, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was no longer Ethan's wife, no longer bound to a man who had never truly loved me. I was Zara, a woman with her own strength, her own worth, and a future that was mine to shape. I slid the papers back into the envelope, sealing it with a sense of finality. Tomorrow I would mail them to Ethan's lawyer, and my new life would truly begin. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. A few weeks after I sent the signed divorce papers, I decided to visit the apartment Ethan and I had once shared to collect the last of my belongings. As I stepped inside, a flood of memories washed over me, both good and bad. I pushed them aside, focusing on the task at hand. I was just finishing up when I heard the front door slam open. I spun around to see Ethan standing there, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snarled, storming towards me. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm just getting the rest of my things, Ethan. I have every right to be here." "Like hell you do," he shouted, grabbing my arm roughly. "This is my apartment, Zara. You have no claim to it anymore." I yanked my arm free, glaring at him. "Actually, Ethan, this apartment has always been in my name. My grandparents gave it to me as a gift, remember? You never had any legal right to it." His eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face. But it was quickly replaced by fury. You can't just sell it without my consent, he bellowed. I won't let you get away with this, Zara. I'll take you to court and make your life a living hell. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Go ahead, Ethan. Take me to court. I'm sure the judge would love to hear about your infidelity and emotional abuse. I have plenty of evidence to back up my claims. He opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, the front door opened again. We both turned to see Valerie standing there, her eyes wide with shock. Ethan, what's going on? She asked, her voice trembling. I smiled coldly. Hello, Valerie. I see you two are still going strong. I hope you know what you're getting into with this one. Valerie's gaze darted between Ethan and me, confusion and fear written all over her face. Ethan, what is she talking about? Ethan's face paled, and he took a step towards her. Valerie, baby, it's not what it looks like. Zara and I are just having a little disagreement about the apartment. It's nothing to worry about. I scoffed. A little disagreement? Is that what you call it when you ambush your ex-wife and try to intimidate her into giving up her property? Valerie's eyes narrowed and she crossed her arms over her chest. Ethan, I think you have some explaining to do. I picked up my box of belongings and brushed past them, pausing in the doorway. You two deserve each other, I said, my voice dripping with contempt. But Valerie, if I were you, I'd watch my back. Ethan has a habit of lying and cheating to get what he wants. With that, I walked out, leaving them to their own devices. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of triumph wash over me. I had stood up to Ethan, had shown him that I was no longer the meek, submissive woman he had married. I was stronger now, and I wasn't going to let him push me around anymore. As I made my way back to my sister's apartment, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from Ethan's manipulation, free from his constant criticism and abuse. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I had survived Ethan's betrayal, had picked up the pieces of my shattered life, and put them back together. And now I was ready to start a new chapter, one where I was in control of my own destiny. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was never going to let anyone treat me the way Ethan had ever again. I was done being a victim, done being a doormat. From now on, I was going to stand up for myself and fight for the life I deserved, and heaven help anyone who tried to stand in my way. A few days after the confrontation at the apartment, I received a call from an old coworker at the law firm. She had overheard Ethan spinning a tale to Valerie about moving into his family's luxurious vacation home, and she couldn't help but reach out to me. Zara, I know it's none of my business, but I thought you should know, she said, her voice laced with concern. Ethan is lying to Valerie about his living situation. I've seen the place he's talking about, and it's a far cry from the mansion he's describing. I thanked her for the information, a plan already forming in my mind. I knew Ethan's lies were going to catch up with him sooner or later, and I was determined to be the one to expose him. I dug through my old files until I found a photo of the actual vacation home, a rundown shack that was barely habitable. Armed with this evidence, I made my way to the law firm, determined to confront Ethan and Valerie. As I walked into the office, I saw them standing together by the water cooler, laughing and flirting as if they didn't have a care in the world. I marched up to them, a smile plastered on my face. Ethan, Valerie, so good to see you both, I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. They turned to face me, Ethan's eyes narrowing in suspicion. What are you doing here, Zara? I thought I made it clear that I didn't want you around. I ignored him, turning to Valerie. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the vacation home, Valerie. It sounds absolutely lovely, but I think there's something you should see. I pulled out the photo of the shack, holding it up for her to see. This is the real vacation home, Valerie. The one Ethan has been lying to you about. Valerie's eyes widened, and she snatched the photo from my hand, studying it closely. Ethan, what is this? You told me it was a luxury estate with a pool and a tennis court. Ethan's face paled, and he stammered, trying to come up with an explanation. But before he could speak, I pulled out my phone, playing a series of audio recordings. The recordings were of Ethan's raunchy encounters with various women at the office, evidence gathered by a fed-up coworker who had had enough of his misconduct. The sound of his grunts and moans filled the air, interspersed with the giggling and sighing of his conquests. Valerie's face turned bright red, and she rounded on Ethan, her eyes blazing with fury. "You bastard! You've been cheating on me this whole time, haven't you? With every woman in this damn office." Ethan held up his hands, trying to placate her. "Valerie, baby, it's not what it sounds like. I can explain." But Valerie wasn't having it. She slapped him hard across the face, leaving a bright red handprint on his cheek. "Save it, Ethan. I've heard enough. I'm going straight to HR and reporting your sorry ass for sexual harassment. We'll see how long you keep your job once they hear about this." She stormed off, leaving Ethan standing there, his mouth agape. He turned to me, his eyes filled with rage and desperation. "You bitch," he snarled, taking a step towards me. "You've ruined everything. I'll make you pay for this, Zara. I swear to God, I'll destroy you." I laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You've already destroyed me, Ethan. You took everything from me, my love, my trust, my self-respect. But now it's my turn. I'm going to watch you lose everything, just like I did, and I'm going to enjoy every damn minute of it." With that, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out, before Ethan's web of lies unraveled completely, and when it did, I would be there to watch him fall. True to her word, Valerie marched straight into HR and reported Ethan's misconduct. She provided them with copies of the audio recordings I had shared, as well as her own testimony about his lies and infidelity. The fallout was swift and severe. Ethan was immediately suspended pending an investigation, and within a week he was fired from the law firm. His reputation was in tatters, and word quickly spread throughout the legal community about his unethical behavior. I watched from the sidelines as Ethan's life unraveled, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. He had brought this upon himself, and now he was paying the price for his actions. But even in his downfall, Ethan couldn't let go of his ego. He showed up at my sister's apartment one evening, pounding on the door and demanding to see me. I opened the door warily, keeping the chain latched. "What do you want, Ethan?" He looked haggard and desperate, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. "Zara, please, you have to help me. I've lost everything, my job, my reputation, even Valerie. I have nowhere else to go." I stared at him incredulously. "You've got to be kidding me. After everything you've done, you have the nerve to come here and ask for my help?" He dropped to his knees, clasping his hands together in a gesture of supplication. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you, Zara. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance." I shook my head, feeling a mix of pity and disgust. "Ethan, I gave you more chances than you ever deserved. I put up with your abuse, your lies, your cheating, all because I loved you. But that love is gone now, and it's never coming back." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "Zara, please, I know I can change. I'll be a better man, I swear it. Just don't leave me like this." I sighed, closing my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, my gaze was steady and resolute. "Ethan, I'm not leaving you. I've already left. I moved on with my life the moment I walked out of our apartment with divorce papers in hand." I reached behind the door and picked up a small box, handing it to him through the gap. "Here, I packed up the rest of your things from the apartment. Consider it my final act of kindness." He took the box, his hands shaking. "Zara, I held up a hand, cutting him off. "I don't want to hear it, Ethan. We're done. I'm done. I have a new life now, one that doesn't include you, and I suggest you start building one for yourself, because I won't be there to pick up the pieces anymore." With that, I shut the door, sliding the chain back into place. I leaned against it for a moment, taking a deep breath. I could hear Ethan on the other side, sobbing and pleading, but I tuned him out. I had meant what I said. I was done with Ethan, done with the toxic love that had nearly destroyed me. I had fought too hard and come too far to let him drag me back down into the darkness. I pushed myself off the door and walked into the living room, where my sister was waiting with a cup of tea and a sympathetic ear. I sat down beside her, taking the mug and inhaling the comforting scent of chamomile. "You did the right thing, Zara," she said, squeezing my hand. "I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "I know, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I'm ready to move on, to start a new chapter in my life." She nodded, her eyes shining with love and understanding. "And I'll be right there with you. every step of the way. I leaned my head on her shoulder, feeling grateful for her unwavering support. Together we sat in silence, sipping our tea and listening to the sound of Ethan's footsteps fading away into the night. A month had passed since I last saw Ethan, and my life had taken a turn for the better. I had accepted a dream job in Seattle, working as a paralegal at a prestigious law firm. It was a fresh start, a chance to build a new life far away from the painful memories of my past. I was packing up the last of my belongings when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ethan standing there, looking disheveled and desperate. "Zara, please, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice hoarse. I sighed, crossing my arms over my chest. "What do you want, Ethan? I thought I made it clear that we were done." He pushed past me, stumbling into the apartment. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and I wrinkled my nose in disgust. "I've lost everything, Zara," he slurred, collapsing onto the couch. "My job, my reputation, even my apartment. I've been sleeping on friends' couches and in my car. I'm drowning in debt, and I don't know what to do." I stared at him, feeling a mix of pity and revulsion. "I'm sorry to hear that, Ethan. But what do you want me to do about it? You brought this on yourself." He looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot and pleading. "I need you, Zara. I need you to give me another chance. I know I can change. I know I can be better. Just please, don't leave me like this." I shook my head, a sad smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "Ethan, I've given you more chances than I can count, and every time you've let me down. You've hurt me in ways I never thought possible, and I can't go through that again." He reached for me, his hands shaking. "But I love you, Zara. I've always loved you. We can make this work. I know we can." I stepped back out of his reach. "No, Ethan, we can't. Because the truth is, you never loved me. You loved the idea of me, of having someone to control and manipulate. But that's not love, and it never will be." I walked over to the door, opening it wide. "I think it's time for you to go, Ethan. I have a new life waiting for me, and you're not a part of it." He stumbled to his feet, his face twisted with anger and desperation. "You can't do this to me, Zara. You can't just walk away like this." I smiled, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. "I can, and I am. Goodbye, Ethan." He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and despair. Then, without another word, he walked out the door and out of my life. I closed the door behind him, leaning against it for a moment. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally over. I was free. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city skyline. In the distance I could see the Space Needle, a symbol of the new life that awaited me. I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. I had a new job, a new city, and a new love waiting for me. A man I had met at the bistro, a kind and gentle soul who had helped me heal and find happiness again. I picked up my suitcase, taking one last look around the apartment. It had been my home for so long, but now it was time to say goodbye. I walked out the door feeling a sense of lightness and freedom. The past was behind me, and the future was bright with promise. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I couldn't help but smile. I had survived the worst that life had thrown at me, and I had come out stronger on the other side. I was ready for whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace the new chapter in my life with open arms. And as I walked down the street, I knew that nothing could ever hold me back again. I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, fussing with the neckline as I surveyed the dining room. Everything had to be perfect for Thomas's celebration dinner. The promotion he'd worked so hard for had finally come through, and I wanted this night to be special. "Vivian, honey, have you seen my blue tie?" Thomas called from upstairs. "Check the second drawer, dear," I replied, lighting the candles on the table. The flickering flames cast a warm glow across the china plates and crystal glasses. I smiled, remembering our wedding day when we'd received this set as a gift. 10 years had flown by in the blink of an eye. Thomas's footsteps on the stairs pulled me from my reverie. He appeared in the doorway, looking dashing in his tailored suit. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. Even after all these years, he still had that effect on me. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Vice President," I teased, straightening his tie. He chuckled, pulling me close. "I couldn't have done it without you, Viv. You've been my rock through it all." The doorbell chimed, interrupting our moment. That'll be Sam and Jack, I said, giving Thomas a quick peck on the cheek before heading to answer the door. Samantha, my best friend since college, greeted me with a warm hug. Congratulations, you two, she exclaimed, handing me a bottle of champagne. Her husband, Jack, nodded in agreement, clapping Thomas on the back as they made their way inside. As we settled around the table, the conversation flowed easily. We laughed over shared memories and toasted to new beginnings. It wasn't until dessert that I noticed something was off. Thomas's phone buzzed on the table, and he glanced at it, a small smile playing on his lips. Everything okay? I asked, curious about what could be so engaging. Oh, just work stuff, he replied, tucking the phone away. But I caught the way his eyes lit up, a spark I hadn't seen in a while. Sam must have noticed too, because she shot me a questioning look. I shrugged it off, determined not to let anything dampen the evening. As our guests were leaving, Sam pulled me aside. Viv, is everything all right with you and Thomas? She whispered, concern etched on her face. Of course, I replied, perhaps a bit too quickly. Why do you ask? She hesitated. It's probably nothing, but Jack mentioned that Thomas has been spending a lot of time with his new mentee at work. Elizabeth, I think her name is? My stomach clenched. I'm sure it's just part of his new responsibilities, I said, forcing a smile. But Sam's words had planted a seed of doubt that I couldn't shake. Later that night, as Thomas and I cleaned up, I couldn't help but ask, So, how's the mentoring going? With Elizabeth, right? Thomas's hand paused mid-wipe of a plate. It's fine, he said, his tone suddenly guarded. She's bright, catches on quickly. That's good, I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. Maybe we should have her over for dinner sometime. I'd love to meet her. Thomas's response was oddly terse. I don't think that's necessary, Viv. It's just work. As I lay in bed that night, Thomas's arm draped over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The seed of doubt Sam had planted began to grow, and I found myself wondering what other changes this promotion might bring to our lives. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a storm that would shake the very foundation of our marriage. The weeks following Thomas's promotion flew by in a whirlwind of late nights and business dinners. I tried to ignore the nagging feeling in my gut, but it grew harder with each passing day. Thomas's phone buzzed constantly, and his eyes lit up every time he checked it. One evening, as I was folding laundry, Thomas's phone chimed on the nightstand. I hesitated for a moment before glancing at the screen. A message from Elizabeth flashed across it. Can't wait for our lunch tomorrow. You always brighten my day. My heart sank. I placed the phone back, my hands trembling slightly. When Thomas came home that night, I couldn't help but confront him. How was work? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Busy as usual, he replied, loosening his tie. Got a big presentation coming up. And how's Elizabeth doing? I saw her message about lunch tomorrow. Thomas froze for a split second before recovering. Oh, that? It's just a mentoring lunch. Nothing to worry about, Viv. But I could see the guilt flickering in his eyes. Thomas, be honest with me. Is there something going on between you two? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Of course not. She's just a colleague. You're being paranoid, Vivian. His dismissive tone stung. Paranoid, Thomas. You light up every time her name is mentioned. I'm not blind. Don't be ridiculous, he snapped. I'm not some hormonal teenager. I can have female friends without it meaning anything. I felt tears pricking at my eyes. Friends don't make their spouses feel like this, Thomas. He stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and fears. The next day, I couldn't concentrate at work. My mind kept wandering to Thomas and Elizabeth, imagining their lunch together. When I got home, I found Thomas in his study, engrossed in his laptop. How was your day? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. He barely looked up. Fine. Busy? And lunch with Elizabeth? This time he did look up, irritation clear on his face. It was just lunch, Vivian. Drop it. But I couldn't. You used to tell me about your day, about the people you work with. Now it's like pulling teeth to get any information out of you. Thomas slammed his laptop shut. Maybe because you turn everything into an interrogation. I'm trying to focus on my career, Vivian. I thought you'd be supportive. I am supportive, I protested, but not at the expense of our marriage. He stood up abruptly. I need some air, he muttered, brushing past me. I heard the front door slam a few moments later. Sinking into his chair, I noticed a post-it note on his desk. In neat handwriting it read, "Elizabeth, dinner reservations Friday 8 p.m. My world tilted on its axis. Dinner reservations? On a Friday night? This was more than mentoring. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and dialed Sam's number. "Viv, what's wrong?" Sam's concerned voice came through. "It's Thomas," I choked out. I think he's having an affair with Elizabeth." There was a pause on the other end. "Oh, honey, I was hoping I was wrong, but I've heard rumors at the office." My heart shattered. "What do I do, Sam?" "First, take a deep breath," she said gently. "We'll figure this out together. Why don't you come over? Jack's out of town, and I think you could use a friend right now." As I hung up, I caught sight of our wedding photo on the bookshelf. Thomas's smiling face mocked me. How had we gone from that happy couple to this? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? With a heavy heart, I grabbed my keys and headed for Sam's house, leaving behind the shattered remains of my once perfect life. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, noticing the fine lines around my eyes that seemed to have deepened overnight. The weight of Thomas's betrayal hung heavy on my shoulders, aging me beyond my years. As I applied concealer to hide the dark circles under my eyes, I couldn't help but wonder if this was why Thomas had turned to Elizabeth. The sound of the front door closing jolted me from my thoughts. Thomas was home. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. "Vivian?" Thomas called out. "We need to talk." I stepped out of the bathroom, my heart pounding. "Yes, we do." Thomas was standing in the living room, his suit jacket draped over the back of a chair. He looked tired, but there was a strange energy about him. "I think we should discuss what's been going on," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. "You mean your affair with Elizabeth?" The words came out sharper than I intended. He flinched. "It's not an affair, Vivian, but I can't deny that there's something there." I felt my world crumbling around me. "Something there?" "Thomas, you're married. To me, remember?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his gesture. "Of course I remember. But Vivian, when was the last time we really connected? When was the last time you showed any interest in my work, my ambitions?" His words hit me like a slap. "I've always supported you, Thomas. I've been here, by your side, through everything." "But that's just it," he said, his voice rising. "You've been here, but have you really been present? Elizabeth, she understands me. She's passionate about her career, about making a difference. When I'm with her, I feel alive." Each word was a dagger to my heart. "And with me, you feel, what? Dead?" Thomas sighed. "That's not what I meant. It's just... Elizabeth is so vibrant, so full of life. She reminds me of you when we first met." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So because I'm not in my 20s anymore, I'm no longer good enough for you?" "That's not fair, Vivian," Thomas protested. "It's not about age. It's about connection, about shared goals and interests." "And what about our shared life, Thomas? Our history, our plans for the future?" My voice cracked with emotion. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't know if those plans fit who I am anymore, Viv. I'm changing, growing. Elizabeth challenges me in ways I never expected." I felt a surge of anger. "And I don't challenge you? Is that what you're saying?" "You used to," he said softly. "But lately it feels like we're just going through the motions. Elizabeth makes me feel alive again." I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. "So what are you saying, Thomas? That you want to leave me for her?" He hesitated, and in that moment of silence, I knew, my world shattered completely. "I don't know what I want," he finally said, "but I can't ignore these feelings anymore." I stood there, frozen, as the reality of our situation crashed over me. This wasn't just a fleeting infatuation or a midlife crisis. This was the end of everything I thought we had built together. "I think you should leave," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Thomas looked shocked. "Vivian, No," I cut him off. "I can't do this right now. I need time to think, to process. Please, just go." He nodded slowly, grabbing his jacket. As he reached the door, he turned back. "I'm sorry, Viv. I never meant for this to happen." The door closed behind him, and I collapsed onto the couch, sobs racking my body. How had we come to this? And more importantly, where did we go from here? As the tears subsided, a new emotion began to take root: determination. If Thomas thought he could just throw away our marriage for a younger model, he had another thing coming. This wasn't over. not by a long shot. The days after Thomas left were a blur of tears and sleepless nights. I threw myself into work, desperate for any distraction from the gaping hole in my life. But even at the hospital, surrounded by the constant bustle of patients and colleagues, I couldn't escape the crushing weight of betrayal. It was during a particularly grueling shift that I received the text that would change everything. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I ducked into the break room to check it. "Thomas, we need to talk. I'm moving out. Can I come by tonight to get some things?" My hands shook as I read the message. This was really happening. He was leaving me for her. I managed to finish my shift, though I couldn't tell you a single thing I did. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, grief, and a growing sense of determination. By the time I got home, I had made up my mind. I wouldn't let Thomas see me broken. The doorbell rang at 7 p.m. sharp. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Thomas stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Hi, Viv. Can I come in?" I stepped aside wordlessly, letting him enter. He glanced around the living room, his eyes lingering on the empty spaces where his things used to be. "I've already packed most of your stuff," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's in boxes in the spare room." He looked surprised. "Oh, thanks, I guess." An awkward silence fell between us. This man, who I had loved for over a decade, now felt like a stranger in our home. "So," I finally said, "you're really doing this? Throwing away our marriage for her?" Thomas sighed. "Vivian, it's not like that. Elizabeth and I, we connect on a level that you and I haven't in years." Something inside me snapped. "Don't you dare try to justify this, Thomas. You made vows to me, for better or worse, remember? Or does that not apply when a younger, shinier model comes along?" "That's not fair," he protested. "I didn't plan for this to happen, but I can't deny my feelings anymore." I laughed bitterly. "Your feelings? What about my feelings, Thomas? Did you even consider them for a second?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "Of course I did. This isn't easy for me either, Viv." "Oh, I'm sure it's so hard for you," I spat. Poor Thomas, torn between his loyal wife and his exciting new girlfriend. However will you cope? "Vivian, please," he pleaded. "Can't we do this civilly?" I felt a surge of rage. "Civilly? You want me to be civil while you destroy everything we've built together? While you humiliate me in front of our friends, our families?" Thomas's face hardened. "I didn't come here to fight. I'll get my things and go." As he turned towards the spare room, something in me broke. "She doesn't love you, you know," I blurted out. He froze. "What?" "Elizabeth," I said, my voice shaking. "She doesn't love you. She's using you to advance her career." Thomas whirled around, his face a mix of anger and confusion. "You don't know what you're talking about. Elizabeth and I know exactly what I'm talking about," I interrupted. "I've heard things, Thomas, from people at your company. She has a reputation for latching on to successful men to climb the corporate ladder." I saw doubt flicker in his eyes, quickly replaced by anger. "You're lying. You're just jealous because she's younger, more vibrant." "More vibrant," I echoed, incredulous. "Is that what this is about? You're having a midlife crisis and I'm just collateral damage?" Thomas's face flushed. "You know what? I don't have to listen to this. I'm leaving." As he stormed towards the door, I called after him. "Go ahead, Thomas. Run to your precious Elizabeth, but don't come crawling back when you realize what a mistake you've made." The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone in the echoing silence of our once happy home. I sank to the floor, my body shaking with sobs. But as the tears subsided, a new feeling emerged, a steely resolve. If Thomas thought he could discard me so easily, he had another thing coming. It was time to fight for what was mine, and heaven help anyone who stood in my way. The morning after Thomas left, I woke up with a newfound determination. I couldn't just sit around and let my life fall apart. I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start. I called in sick to work for the first time in years and dialed Sam's number. "Sam, I need your help," I said as soon as she picked up. "Can you meet me for coffee?" An hour later, we were seated in a quiet corner of our favorite cafe. Sam's face was etched with concern. "Viv, honey, how are you holding up?" I took a deep breath. "I'm managing, but I need to know more about Elizabeth. You work with her, right?" Sam nodded, her expression turning guarded. "I do, but Viv, are you sure you want to go down this road?" "I have to, Sam. I need to understand what's really going on." She sighed, then leaned in closer. "All right, but You didn't hear this from me. Elizabeth, she has a reputation at the office. This isn't the first time she's gotten close to a senior executive. My heart raced. What do you mean? Last year, she was mentored by the CFO. He left his wife, but a few months later, Elizabeth moved on to greener pastures. The poor guy's career never recovered. I felt a mix of vindication and dread. So she's using Thomas? Sam nodded grimly. It looks that way. But Viv, there's more. I overheard her on the phone yesterday. She was talking to someone, I think her boyfriend, about a big promotion coming her way. My world tilted on its axis. Boyfriend? Are you sure? Pretty sure. She was talking about weekend plans and using pet names. It definitely wasn't Thomas she was talking to. I sat back, my mind reeling. Thomas wasn't just leaving me. He was being played for a fool. What are you going to do? Sam asked softly. I squared my shoulders. I'm going to fight for my marriage. The next few days were a whirlwind. I threw myself into uncovering everything I could about Elizabeth. I scoured social media, called in favors from mutual acquaintances, and even hired a private investigator. What I discovered left me feeling sick. Elizabeth had a long-term boyfriend who worked at a competing firm. Their social media was full of loved-up photos and plans for the future. Meanwhile, she was stringing Thomas along, using him to secure a major promotion. I was mulling over this information when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Thomas. Can we talk? I've been doing some thinking. My heart leaped. Was he having second thoughts? I quickly replied, agreeing to meet him at our favorite park the next day. As I approached our usual bench, I saw Thomas already seated, looking haggard and conflicted. He stood when he saw me, his eyes searching my face. Vivian, he began, his voice hoarse. I've made a terrible mistake. I felt a surge of hope, quickly tempered by caution. What do you mean, Thomas? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. I've been blind, Viv. Elizabeth, she's not who I thought she was. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I know about her boyfriend, Thomas, and her history with executives at the company. His face crumpled. You knew? Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? I asked softly. He looked away, shame written across his features. I don't know. I've been such a fool, Viv. Can you ever forgive me? I stood there, my emotions warring within me. Part of me wanted to take him in my arms, to forgive and forget. But another part, a stronger part, held back. I don't know, Thomas, I said finally. You've hurt me deeply. You were ready to throw away our entire life together for a woman you barely knew. I know, he whispered. I'll do anything to make it right, Viv. Please, just tell me what I need to do. As I looked at him, broken and pleading, I realized I had a choice to make. Did I want to try and salvage our marriage, or was it time to walk away and start anew? The decision I made in that moment would shape the rest of my life. And as the weight of it settled on my shoulders, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, steeling myself for what was about to come. After days of internal struggle, I had made a decision that would change everything. I was going to confront Elizabeth face to face. The cafe where we agreed to meet was bustling with the lunch crowd. I spotted Elizabeth immediately, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer outfit standing out among the sea of office workers. As I approached, she looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. Vivian, she said, her voice cool and composed. I must admit, I was surprised when you reached out. I slid into the seat across from her, my heart pounding. Thank you for meeting me, Elizabeth. I think we have a lot to discuss. She raised an eyebrow. Do we? I was under the impression that your situation with Thomas was resolved. I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my voice steady. That's exactly why I'm here. I know about your boyfriend, Elizabeth, and your history with executives at the company. For a split second, her carefully crafted facade cracked. Fear flashed in her eyes before she regained her composure. I'm not sure what you're implying, Vivian. I think you know exactly what I'm implying, I said, leaning forward. You've been using Thomas to advance your career, haven't you? Just like you did with the CFO last year. Elizabeth's face hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos my private investigator had taken of her with her boyfriend. Care to explain these? She stared at the images, her face paling. How did you? It doesn't matter, I cut her off. What matters is that you've been playing with people's lives, Elizabeth. With my life. To my surprise, Elizabeth's shoulders sagged. For the first time, I saw a glimpse of vulnerability behind her polished exterior. You don't understand, she said softly. This job, this career, it's all I have. I've had to fight tooth and nail for every opportunity. By destroying marriages? I asked incredulously. She looked away. I never meant for it to go this far with Thomas. He wouldn't take no for an answer. I thought if I played along, I could secure the promotion and then let him down gently. I felt a surge of anger. Let him down gently? Do you have any idea what you've done to our marriage? Elizabeth met my gaze, her eyes surprisingly sincere. I'm sorry, Vivian. Truly. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I didn't know how to get out of it without jeopardizing everything I've worked for. As I sat there processing her words, I realized something. Elizabeth wasn't the villain I had painted her to be. She was just a woman trying to navigate a cutthroat world, making questionable choices along the way. What are you going to do now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth sighed. I don't know. If this gets out, my career is over. But I can't keep living this lie. In that moment, I made a decision that surprised even me. I won't expose you, Elizabeth, I said. But you need to come clean to Thomas. He deserves to know the truth. She nodded, relief washing over her face. I will, I promise. As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a new burden. Now that I knew the truth, what was I going to do about my marriage? I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw Thomas's car. He was waiting for me on the porch, his face etched with concern and hope. As I walked towards him, I realized that this was it. The moment that would define our future. With each step, I felt the weight of our history, the pain of betrayal, and the faint glimmer of possibility. Vivian, Thomas said, his voice breaking. Can we talk? I took a deep breath, knowing that whatever I said next would change everything. The future of our marriage hung in the balance, and the decision was mine to make. I stood on the porch facing Thomas, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of everything we'd been through, everything I'd learned, pressed down on me like a physical force. Yes, Thomas, we need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We moved inside, the familiar surroundings of our home now feeling alien and tense. Thomas sat on the edge of the couch, his posture rigid with anxiety. Vivian, I've made a terrible mistake, he began, his voice cracking. I don't know what I was thinking. Elizabeth, I held up a hand, cutting him off. I know about Elizabeth, Thomas. I know everything. His eyes widened in shock. What do you mean? I mean I know about her boyfriend, her history with executives at the company, her using you for a promotion, I said, each word deliberate and heavy. Thomas's face crumpled, a mix of shame and disbelief washing over him. How did you find out? It doesn't matter, I replied, feeling a surge of strength. What matters is that I know, and now you know too. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. God, Vivian, I've been such a fool. Can you ever forgive me? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say next. Forgiveness isn't the issue here, Thomas. The issue is trust. You were ready to throw away our entire marriage, our life together, for a fantasy. I know, he whispered, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. I'll do anything to make it right. Please, Viv, just tell me what I need to do. For a moment, I was tempted. The familiar pull of our shared history, the comfort of the known, tugged at my heart. But then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the casual cruelty of his comparisons between Elizabeth and me. I'm sorry, Thomas, I said, my voice soft but firm. But I don't think there's anything you can do. I've made my decision. He looked at me, confusion and fear dawning on his face. What do you mean? I squared my shoulders, drawing on a well of strength I didn't know I possessed. I want a divorce, Thomas. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. Thomas stared at me, shock written across his features. Divorce? He echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. Vivian, please, we can work this out. I love you. I shook my head, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. It's not about love anymore, Thomas. It's about respect, self-respect. And I've realized that I can't stay in a marriage where that's been so fundamentally broken. But what about our life together, our plans? He stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. Those plans were for a different Vivian and Thomas, I replied. We're not those people anymore. As the reality of the situation sank in, Thomas's demeanor changed. Desperation gave way to anger. You can't do this, he said, his voice rising. You're throwing away years of marriage over one mistake. I stood my ground, unflinching. It wasn't just one mistake, Thomas. It was a series of choices that showed me exactly where I stood in your life, and I deserve better. You'll regret this, he spat, jumping to his feet. You're nothing without me, Vivian. Who do you think you are? His words, meant to hurt and diminish, instead filled me with a fierce determination. I'm Vivian, I said, my voice strong and clear, and I'm more than enough on my own. Thomas stormed out, slamming the door behind him. As the echo faded, I sank onto the couch, the enormity of what had just happened washing over me. Tears came then, a mix of grief for what was lost and relief for what was to come. As I sat there in the quiet of the house that had once been our home, I realized that this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. A chapter where I, Vivian, would be the author of my own story. The road ahead would be challenging, I knew. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Because now I was fighting for myself. 1 year after I asked Thomas for a divorce, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my new blazer. The woman staring back at me was different from the one who had once defined herself as Thomas's wife. She was stronger, more confident, and unapologetically herself. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Good luck today. You've got this. I smiled, grateful for her unwavering support throughout this tumultuous year. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my briefcase and headed out the door. The hospital boardroom was intimidating, filled with stern-faced executives. As the newly appointed head of nursing, I was presenting my plan to revolutionize patient care. As I began my presentation, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face at the back of the room. Thomas. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a flicker of recognition, then regret. But I didn't falter. Instead, I channeled all the strength I'd gained over the past year into my words, my vision for the future of healthcare. As I concluded, the room erupted in applause. The CEO stood up, beaming. Vivian, this is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. You have our full support. Elation washed over me. This was my moment, my triumph. As the room cleared out, Thomas approached hesitantly. Congratulations, Viv, he said softly. You were incredible. I nodded, maintaining my composure. Thank you, Thomas. He shifted uncomfortably. I heard about your promotion, and now this. You've really flourished. I have, I agreed, feeling a surge of pride. Thomas's face. I made a terrible mistake, Vivian. Leaving you was the biggest regret of my life. Elizabeth, she used you, I finished for him. I know, but Thomas, that's not why our marriage ended. It ended because you were willing to throw away everything we had built together. He nodded, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. I know that now. Seeing you today, so confident and successful, I realized what I lost. Is there any chance we could? I held up a hand, stopping him. No, Thomas, what we had is gone. But I'm grateful for the journey, because it led me here. As I watched him walk away, shoulders slumped, I felt no joy in his misery. Instead, I felt a profound sense of closure. Later that evening, I met Sam for dinner to celebrate. As we clinked glasses, she grinned at me. To Vivian 2.0, I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. You know, Sam, a year ago I thought my life was over. I thought Thomas's betrayal had broken me. Sam reached across the table, squeezing my hand. But it didn't. It made you stronger. I nodded, reflecting on the journey. It did. I realized that my worth wasn't tied to being someone's wife. It was always within me, waiting to be unleashed. As we finished our meal, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Elizabeth. I saw the news about your presentation. Congratulations, Vivian. What you've achieved is truly inspiring. I smiled, remembering our conversation a year ago. Elizabeth had kept her promise, coming clean to Thomas and facing the consequences of her actions. In an unexpected turn of events, we had developed a cautious friendship, bonding over our shared experiences in a male-dominated world. As Sam and I walked out of the restaurant, arm in arm, I looked up at the starry sky. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities I had never dared to imagine before. You know, Sam, I said, I used to think that the best revenge would be seeing Thomas miserable. But now I realize The best revenge is living my best life. Sam grinned, giving me a playful nudge, and boy, are you living it. As we parted ways, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartbreak, but it had led me here, to this moment of triumph and self-discovery. I was Vivian, stronger and more vibrant than ever before. And this was just the beginning of my story.
I never thought I'd be the type of person to snoop through my husband's computer. Yet here I was, sitting in our home office at midnight, heart racing as I clicked through folders looking for Sophie's baby pictures. My name is Clara, and this is how I discovered my husband's betrayal, all because of a stupid school project. Mom, I need pictures of me as a baby for show and tell tomorrow, Sophie had announced at bedtime, giving me that last-minute panic all parents know too well. Ryan always handled the family photos, organizing them meticulously on his laptop. He was away at another late meeting, so I figured I'd just grab what I needed quickly. The cursor hovered over a folder labeled Family Photos 2023. Double-click. Nothing about Sophie. Instead, my screen filled with images that made my stomach drop. My husband, Ryan, with his arm around a woman I recognized from his office holiday party. Natalie something. They were at a beach I'd never seen, looking far too comfortable together. My hands started shaking. I opened another folder, then another. Each click revealed more photos, more moments I knew nothing about. Casual dinners, hiking trips, even a weekend getaway, judging by the hotel room backgrounds. Mommy. Sophie's voice made me jump. Did you find my pictures? I slammed the laptop shut. Not yet, sweetie. Let's look tomorrow, okay? It's way past bedtime. But you said. I know, baby. I'm sorry. I forced a smile. How about we take new pictures in the morning? You can wear your favorite dress. After tucking her back in, I returned to the office, my mind racing. The photos were bad enough, but then I found the messages. Hundreds of them, spanning months. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through their conversations. Missing you already, Natalie had written just hours ago. Last weekend was perfect. I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Ryan's response made me physically ill. Soon, I promise. Just need to figure out the right timing. The right timing? For what? Leaving us? The thought of him planning his exit while playing happy family made rage bubble up inside me. Just yesterday, he'd kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me. Had he already been with her? My phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. Running late again. Don't wait up. I stared at those words, remembering all the late nights, the business trips, the weekend team-building events. How long had I been playing the role of foolish, trusting wife? The house felt suffocating. I needed air, needed to think. Opening the back door, I stepped onto our patio, where Sophie's birthday decorations still hung from her party last weekend. Ryan had been on his phone the whole time. I remembered now. Probably texting her. Lisa, my best friend, would tell me to confront him immediately. My brother Mark would offer to beat him up. But looking through our kitchen window at Sophie's artwork on the fridge, I knew I needed a better plan. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting our daughter. I went back to the laptop, took screenshots, and saved everything to a USB drive. Then I carefully restored all the folders exactly as I'd found them. Ryan was always so organized, so careful. He'd taught me that attention to detail matters in everything you do. Well, he was right about that. Tomorrow, I'd act normal. Kiss him goodbye, pack Sophie's lunch, work on my graphic design projects. But behind that routine, I'd be planning. Because Ryan wasn't the only one who could keep secrets. My phone buzzed again. Love you. See you in the morning. I typed back, love you too. And for the first time in our marriage, I lied. Lisa nearly choked on her coffee when I showed her the photos. We were sitting in her office during her lunch break, and I just dumped everything I'd found on her desk. That absolute piece of. She caught herself, remembering we were in her professional space. Clara, honey, how are you holding it together? I fidgeted with my wedding ring, a habit I'd developed over the past sleepless week. Sophie, I have to keep it together for her. But Lisa, there's more. I pulled out my phone and showed her the text I'd received that morning. Ryan wanted to take Sophie on a weekend trip to his parents' lake house, just the two of them. He'd never done that before. He's testing the waters, Lisa said, her therapist voice creeping in. seeing how Sophie handles being alone with him for extended periods. My stomach churned. You think he's planning to fight for custody? I think you need a lawyer. Lisa reached for her desk drawer and pulled out a business card. Margaret Chin. She handled my sister's divorce. She's expensive, but she's worth every penny. I haven't even confronted him yet, I said, but took the card anyway. Exactly. And you shouldn't. Not until you're ready. Lisa leaned forward. Clara, I've seen this before. Men like Ryan, they're planners. They don't leave anything to chance. He's been documenting everything, organizing those photos meticulously. You need to be just as prepared. The office suddenly felt too small. Through the window, I could see people going about their normal lives, wondering how many of them were hiding similar secrets. There's something else, I admitted. Yesterday, I saw a notification pop up on his phone. He's viewing properties in the city. 3-bedroom apartments. Lisa's expression darkened. Near Natalie's office? I nodded, fighting back tears. 10 minutes away. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Lisa grabbed a legal pad. First, you're going to let him take Sophie this weekend. What? No. Yes. Because while they're gone, we're going to do some digging. Bank statements, credit card bills, everything. You need to know exactly what you're dealing with. My phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. Made dinner reservations for tonight. That new Italian place you wanted to try. Just us. Lisa read the message over my shoulder. He's love-bombing you. Classic move when they're feeling guilty or planning something. Or maybe he's having second thoughts? The hope in my voice sounded pathetic even to me. Clara. Lisa's tone was gentle but firm. Remember the beach photos? That wasn't a one-time thing. That was a vacation. Planned, booked, executed. While you were home with Sophie, probably thinking he was at another sales conference. She was right. I thought about all the times I'd defended Ryan to friends who questioned his late nights. All the times I'd praised him for being such a devoted father and husband. I feel so stupid, I whispered. No. Lisa grabbed my hands. You trusted your husband. He's the one who should feel stupid for throwing away a family that loved him. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sophie's school. She wasn't feeling well and needed to be picked up. Go, Lisa said. But Clara? Don't go to dinner tonight. Tell him Sophie needs you home. Let him sit there alone, checking his watch, wondering. Sometimes the best revenge is simply withdrawing the love they took for granted. As I drove to Sophie's school, my mind raced with possibilities. The lawyer's card seemed to burn in my purse. Part of me wanted to confront Ryan immediately, to scream and throw things. But Lisa was right. I needed to be smarter than that. I texted Ryan, Sophie's sick. Have to cancel dinner. So sorry. His response came quickly. Everything okay? Want me to come home? No need. You enjoy your evening. I wondered if he'd meet Natalie instead. If he'd take her to our reservation. And for the first time since discovering the truth, I felt something besides pain. I felt power. Because while Ryan thought he was carefully orchestrating his exit, he had no idea I was writing my own script. Sophie was waiting in the nurse's office, pale but smiling when she saw me. As I hugged her, I made my decision. This weekend, while they were at the lake house, I'd start building my case. And Ryan would never see it coming. The lake house weekend gave me exactly what I needed, just not in the way I expected. While Ryan and Sophie were away, I'd planned to dig through his office, but I never got the chance. Instead, the evidence literally walked through my front door. I was sorting through bank statements when the doorbell rang. Opening it, I found myself face to face with Natalie Brooks. I know who you are, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She nodded, clutching her designer purse like a shield. Can we talk? Every instinct screamed to slam the door, but curiosity won out. I led her to the kitchen, where Sophie's artwork still covered the fridge. Natalie's eyes lingered on a family drawing. Stick figures holding hands, all wearing huge smiles. Coffee, I offered, mostly to fill the silence. I shouldn't be here. She remained standing. But Ryan doesn't know I came, and I thought, you deserve to know everything. My hands gripped the counter. Everything about what? The apartment hunting? The planned custody arrangement? Or just the affair? Her face paled. You know about the apartments? I know enough. I forced myself to meet her eyes. What I don't know is why you're here. Natalie pulled out her phone, hands shaking slightly. Because of this, she showed me an email chain between Ryan and a realtor. The most recent message discussed closing dates and school districts. He said he was leaving you after Sophie's school year ends, she continued. But yesterday, I found out he's been saying the same thing to Jessica in accounting. The room tilted slightly. What? I'm not the only one, Clara. God, I'm so stupid. I thought I was special. Her laugh was bitter. Turns out I'm just part of his pattern. I sank into a kitchen chair, my mind racing. How many? That I know of? 3, including me. All from different departments. She placed a USB drive on the table. Everything's here. Emails, photos, hotel receipts. Use it however you want. Why are you doing this? Natalie's eyes drifted back to Sophie's drawing. Because I have a daughter too. She's 12. And 2 years ago, my ex-husband did exactly what Ryan's doing now. I just wish someone had warned me. The front door opened before I could respond. Ryan's voice called out, Clara? We're home early. Sophie got carsick. Natalie's eyes widened in panic. I grabbed her arm and pushed her toward the back door, whispering, Go. Now. She slipped out just as Ryan entered the kitchen, carrying a pale-looking Sophie. Someone was here, he asked, noticing the 2 coffee mugs on the counter. Lisa stopped by. The lie came easily now. Sophie, sweetie, let's get you to bed. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep and Ryan was in the shower, I plugged in the USB drive. What I found made me physically ill. Not just the evidence of multiple affairs, but emails to his lawyer discussing divorce strategies. Plans to paint me as unstable, workaholic, neglectful. A detailed timeline for leaving that had been in motion for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. There's one more thing. Check the folder marked Project Phoenix. The company's investigating him for embezzlement. He's been moving money around, preparing to run. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Financial records, offshore accounts, falsified reports, all meticulously documented. Ryan hadn't just been planning to leave us. He was planning to disappear completely, probably with Jessica from accounting, leaving me to deal with the legal fallout. Another text from Natalie, meeting with HR tomorrow at 9 a.m. to turn everything in. Thought you should know. I deleted the message and closed the laptop. Upstairs, the shower was still running. Ryan was humming, the same tune he'd hummed on our wedding day. My hand brushed against Lisa's lawyer's card in my pocket. Tomorrow, Ryan would walk into work thinking he had everything under control. He'd smile at Natalie, flirt with Jessica, and continue building his house of cards. But tonight, I had choices to make. About Sophie. About our future. About whether revenge meant destroying him completely or simply walking away with everything he thought he'd taken from me. The shower stopped. I heard Ryan's familiar footsteps. Hey, he called out. Everything okay down there? I looked at the USB drive in my hand and smiled. Everything's fine. Just finishing up some work. The morning Natalie was supposed to meet with HR, Ryan didn't go to work. Instead, he was sitting at our kitchen table when I came downstairs, still in his pajamas, looking through old family albums. Remember this? He held up a photo from Sophie's 3rd birthday. You made that butterfly cake from scratch. It looked terrible, but Sophie loved it. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Natalie wondering where Ryan was. I ignored it. Why are you here, Ryan? He closed the album carefully. I got an interesting email last night. Someone's been accessing my work files. IT flagged it. His eyes met mine. From our home network. The air felt thick. I poured myself coffee, buying time. Sounds serious. It is. He drummed his fingers on the table. Especially since some sensitive financial documents were copied. The kind that could cause real problems for certain people. People like you? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Clara, let's be honest with each other. What do you think you're doing? Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. I sat across from him. How's Jessica from accounting, by the way? Or should I ask about the offshore accounts first? The color drained from his face. For a moment, I saw a panic flash in his eyes before his practiced charm took over. Whatever you think you know. I know everything, Ryan. The affairs, the money, the plans to leave. Your whole house of cards. I pulled out my phone, showing him Natalie's text thread. Turns out your girlfriends talk to each other. And to me. He reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. Sophie's still asleep, I reminded him quietly. Let's keep this civil. Civil. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. You're threatening to destroy everything I've built. No, you did that yourself. I'm just deciding what to do with the wreckage. My phone buzzed again. This time Ryan's phone chimed too. His face changed as he read the message. HR meeting canceled, he said. Natalie called in sick. He looked up. What did you do? Nothing. Yet. I took a sip of coffee. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer half of everything, the legal half, into my name. You're going to agree to joint custody, and you're going to disappear from Sophie's life slowly on my terms. So it doesn't break her heart all at once. Or what? You'll turn me in. His voice hardened. Think carefully, Clara. If I go down, we all do. No money for Sophie's college. No comfortable life. Is that what you want? Before I could answer, small footsteps padded down the stairs. Sophie appeared in her unicorn pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Daddy? You're home. Ryan's face softened instantly as she climbed into his lap. Hey, princess. Just working from home today. Over Sophie's head, our eyes met in a silent standoff. He knew I wouldn't risk Sophie's future, but he'd forgotten something crucial about me, something he'd once loved. I was a graphic designer. I noticed details, like how his laptop password was Sophie's birthday, like how he always backed up everything, including emails he thought were deleted, like how his careful plans left a trail someone creative could follow. Sophie, honey, I said, why don't you show Daddy that new drawing you made? The one about your future. She ran to get it, leaving us alone again. You have until tonight, I said quietly, to decide how this plays out. But remember, I'm not the only one with copies of those files. And Natalie's not the only one who knows where they are. Ryan's jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Maybe. Want to risk finding out. Sophie returned with her drawing, a picture of her future self as a veterinarian. As she explained every detail to Ryan, I watched him hold her, knowing these moments were numbered. Not because I wanted revenge, but because sometimes protecting someone means letting them lose everything else. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from Lisa, Margaret Chen can see you at 2 p.m. Don't tell Ryan. I deleted the message and watched my daughter smile at her father, memorizing the moment before everything changed. My brother Mark's guest room felt like a sanctuary after the chaos at home. Sophie was already asleep, exhausted from what I'd told her was a surprise sleepover at Uncle Mark's. I hadn't planned on leaving tonight, but Ryan's final move forced my hand. He did what? Mark paced his kitchen, hands clenched. Show me again. I pulled up the bank app on my phone. Our joint accounts, completely drained. Every penny transferred out just hours after our confrontation. Classic Ryan, Mark muttered. Always thinking 3 steps ahead. He left exactly enough for 1 month's expenses. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Such a thoughtful husband. Mark grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, sliding one across the counter to me. Have you called the lawyer yet? Margaret Chen? Meeting tomorrow at 9. I took a long drink. But that's not even the worst part. I showed him the email I'd received just before fleeing the house. Ryan had copied his company's board of directors, detailing my unauthorized access of company files and threatening legal action. He'd positioned himself as the whistleblower, making me the criminal. Clever bastard, Mark said. He's trying to discredit you before you can use anything against him. A noise from upstairs made us both freeze, but it was just Mark's son Tommy getting water. Through the kitchen doorway, I watched him wave sleepily to Sophie, who'd appeared in the hallway. Mom. She padded into the kitchen, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Dad keeps calling. My phone showed 8 missed calls. As we watched, a text appeared. You're making this worse than it needs to be. Come home. We can fix this. Sophie, honey, I started, but Mark interrupted. Hey, Squirt, want to help Tommy set up the Nintendo in his room? I bet he'll let you pick the first game. Once the kids were upstairs, Mark turned to me. You need to call Mom's old attorney friend. Tonight. It's almost midnight. Clara, listen to me. Ryan's not just protecting himself anymore. He's actively attacking. That email to the board? That's him building a case to paint you as unstable, vindictive. Next will be custody. My hands shook as I reached for my phone again. This time there was a voicemail from Natalie. Clara, I'm sorry. He made me sign a statement saying I never gave you any files. Said he'd make sure I lost everything if I didn't. I have my daughter to think about. I should never have tried to fight him, I whispered. He's always been better at this game. Mark grabbed my shoulders. No, this isn't about winning anymore. This is about surviving. And you're not doing it alone. My phone buzzed again, Ryan. I'm coming over to Mark's. Sophie needs to be home in her own bed. Don't make this difficult. He can't just... Mark started, but headlights swept across the kitchen windows. Ryan's car. Take Sophie upstairs, I said, suddenly calm. Lock the door. Clara. Now, Mark. As Mark disappeared upstairs, I opened my laptop and connected to the home security camera feed I'd installed last week. The screen showed Ryan at our empty house, not here at all. The headlights belonged to a neighbor. But the message was clear. He knew where we were, and this was just the beginning. I opened my email and began typing, Dear Margaret Chen, I need your help immediately. My husband has emptied our accounts and is threatening to frame me for corporate espionage. I have evidence of his affairs and financial fraud, but he's trying to discredit me before I can use it. Upstairs, I could hear Sophie and Tommy laughing at their game. Mark was probably sitting guard outside their door, ready to protect them like he'd protected me when we were kids. Another text from Ryan. Last chance, Clara. Don't forget, I know all your secrets too. I thought about the USB drive hidden in my tampons box, the cloud backups Lisa helped me create, the screenshots saved to multiple accounts. Ryan thought he knew all my moves because he'd never really seen me. Not the real me. I hit send on the email, then started another to the board of directors. It was time they knew exactly who their star executive really was. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning the game. It's about changing the rules entirely. Margaret Chen's office felt too cold, too sterile for the bomb she just dropped on me. They're freezing all your accounts, personal and business. The judge granted Ryan's emergency petition this morning. I gripped the armrests of my chair. He can't do that. Those are my client's payments. He's claiming you used company resources to build your freelance business. That all your income is potentially tied to stolen proprietary information. Margaret's expression was grim. It's temporary, but it could take weeks to fight. My phone buzzed. Another client canceling their contract. That made 5 since Ryan's mass email went out last night, warning my entire professional network about the ongoing investigation. He's destroying everything I built, I whispered. Clara. Margaret leaned forward. There's more. Ryan's filing for emergency custody of Sophie. He's claiming your unstable behavior and financial irregularities make you an unfit parent. The room tilted. I fumbled for my water bottle, but my hands were shaking too badly to open it. When? Hearings tomorrow morning. I've already filed our response, but... My phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. Clara, where are you? Ryan's here with a police officer. They're saying something about a court order. The rest of his words faded into static. I was already running to my car, Margaret calling after me about not making things worse. I broke every speed limit getting to Mark's house. 2 police cars sat in his driveway, lights flashing. Ryan stood on the porch, Sophie crying in his arms while an officer held Mark back. Mommy. Sophie reached for me, but Ryan turned away, shielding her. Clara, he said calmly, like we were discussing dinner plans. The officer has the custody order. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She doesn't want to go with you. Mark shouted. Tell them, Sophie. But Sophie just cried harder, clinging to her father, the only stability in her crumbling world. My fault. All my fault. Mrs. Thompson. One officer stepped forward. We need you to stay back. The court order is clear. 2 minutes, I managed. Please. Just 2 minutes to say goodbye. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. He set Sophie down, and she ran to me. I knelt, pulling her close, breathing in her familiar strawberry shampoo smell. It's just for a little while, baby, I whispered. Like a sleepover at Daddy's. But I want to stay with you and Uncle Mark. Her small fingers clutched my shirt. Why are you crying? Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. I wiped my eyes. But I'm going to fix this. I promise. Ryan cleared his throat. Time to go, princess. Sophie's hand slipped from mine. I watched Ryan buckle her into his car, watched them drive away while Mark held me up, because my legs couldn't anymore. He won, I said numbly. He actually won. My phone buzzed again, Lisa this time. Just heard from Natalie. Ryan offered her a promotion and full custody of her daughter in exchange for testifying against you. She's taking the deal. I deleted the message, then deleted Natalie's number. What was the point anymore? Ryan had outmaneuvered me at every turn. My business was ruined. My daughter gone. My reputation destroyed. Even the evidence I'd gathered was useless now that everyone involved had turned against me. Come inside, Mark said softly. We'll call Margaret, figure out our next move. But I stayed on his driveway, watching the space where Sophie had disappeared, remembering how Ryan used to say I was too trusting, too straightforward. He'd meant it as a compliment then. My phone buzzed one last time, an email from Ryan's company board, due to the serious nature of these allegations. I didn't need to read the rest. They were distancing themselves, protecting the company. Just like Natalie was protecting herself. Just like Ryan had always protected himself. Maybe it was time I learned to do the same. I opened my phone and dialed a number I'd sworn never to use. Ryan's biggest corporate rival. Hello, I said when they answered. I have some information about Thompson Industries you might be interested in. Sometimes when you've lost everything, you stop playing by the rules entirely. The board meeting was already in chaos when I walked in. Ryan stood at the head of the table, his perfect composure finally cracking as he tried to explain the anonymous tip that had triggered a federal investigation into the company's finances. This is a malicious attack, he was saying, obviously orchestrated by. He stopped when he saw me. The room fell silent. Clara, he said carefully, this is a closed meeting. I placed a USB drive on the table. Actually, I was invited by the SEC investigators. The board chairman, Mr. Peterson, cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson has provided some concerning documentation. We felt it prudent to hear all sides. Ryan's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened against the table. Whatever she's told you is backed up by forensic accounting, I interrupted. Everything's there. The offshore accounts, the manipulated contracts, even that clever little scheme with the shell companies you set up in Sophie's name. That hit home. His face paled. You wouldn't. That would implicate you too. Actually, I pulled out Margaret Chen's carefully prepared documents. I've already signed an immunity deal. Full cooperation in exchange for clearing my name. The investigators were very interested in how you tried to frame me. A murmur went through the board members. Ryan's carefully constructed narrative was unraveling, and he knew it. What do you want? He asked quietly. Sophie. My voice didn't shake. Full custody. No appeals. No more legal games. Sign the papers right now. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Or what? You'll destroy everything? Including your daughter's trust fund. No, I said. I'll tell Sophie the truth. About everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every time you chose yourself over her. She's old enough to understand now. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I met his eyes. You taught me well, Ryan. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to win. The room was dead silent. Board members shifted uncomfortably as father and daughter faced off across the corporate battlefield Ryan had created. His phone buzzed, probably Natalie, wondering why their escape plan had derailed. He ignored it. The papers, he said finally. Show me. Margaret stepped into the room, right on cue, with the custody agreement. As Ryan read through it, his hands trembled slightly. If I sign this, the USB drive goes to my lawyer instead of the FBI. You'll have time to arrange things. He looked up sharply. You're giving me a chance to run. I'm giving Sophie a chance to remember her father as something better than a criminal. The pen hovered over the paper. In that moment, I saw the man I'd married, the one who'd once held our newborn daughter with tears in his eyes, promising to always protect her. She'll hate me anyway, he whispered. No, I said softly. She'll miss you. There's a difference. He signed. As security escorted Ryan out, a temporary leave of absence, while the company investigated these concerning allegations, he paused beside me. You could have taken everything, he said. Why didn't you? I thought of Sophie. waiting at Mark's house, still believing in fairy tales and happy endings. Because revenge wasn't worth teaching our daughter that destroying people is how you win. He nodded once, understanding finally crossing his face. Then he was gone. Mr. Peterson approached with a thick envelope. "Mrs. Thompson, about your consulting contract." "I don't want it," I said. "Just clear my name publicly." "That's enough." Outside, rain had started falling. My phone showed a message from Mark. "Sophie's asking when she can come home." Home. Not to him or me. Just home. I texted back, "Tell her very soon." And Mark? "Thank you for believing in me." As I drove away from the corporate tower where Ryan had built his empire, I realized something. In trying to destroy me, he'd actually forced me to become stronger than I'd ever been. Sometimes winning isn't about what you take from someone else. It's about what you refuse to let them take from you. 6 months later, I found the letter while unpacking the last box in our new apartment. It had slipped behind Sophie's old baby book, cream-colored envelope, my mother's elegant handwriting. For Clara when you need it most. Sophie was at her weekly art therapy session, processing everything in bright colors and bold strokes. The apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of city traffic. I sat on the floor, surrounded by memories, and opened the letter my mother had written before she died. "My dearest Clara," it began. "By the time you read this, you'll understand that strength isn't about winning battles. It's about choosing which ones are worth fighting." The doorbell interrupted my reading. Through the peephole, I saw Natalie, looking different than I remembered. Softer somehow, without her corporate armor. "I'm leaving town," she said when I opened the door. "Got a job offer in Seattle." I thought you should know Ryan's there." "I know." I tracked the wire transfers to his new account. "How's your daughter?" "Better, now that I'm making better choices." She shifted uncomfortably. "Have you heard from him?" "He sends Sophie postcards. Never with a return address, but she likes getting them." Natalie nodded. "He asked about her when I saw him last week. He seemed different. Smaller, maybe. People usually do, once you stop letting them cast shadows over your life." After she left, I returned to my mother's letter, reading through tears about resilience and forgiveness, not for others, but for yourself. About teaching your children that love doesn't mean accepting betrayal, and strength doesn't mean destroying your enemies. My phone buzzed, a text from Lisa. "Guess who just got approved for her counseling license? Drinks tonight." Before I could reply, another message came through from Ryan's old number. "Sophie's art show next week. Can I come?" I stared at the message, remembering the boardroom, his face when he signed the custody papers. He'd disappeared the next day, leaving behind a company in chaos and a daughter with questions I couldn't answer. "Ask Sophie," I typed back. "It's her show." Later that evening, Mark came over with takeout. Sophie was showing his son Tommy her latest paintings when Mark handed me an envelope. "Ryan's lawyer dropped this off," he said quietly. "It's not legal papers," I checked. Inside was a check, a massive one, and a note. "For Sophie's college fund. No strings attached. I'm trying to do better. Are you going to cash it?" Mark asked. I watched Sophie laugh at something Tommy said, her eyes bright, her smile real again. "Yes, I decided. But not because he sent it. Because she deserves every chance at a better future." The next morning, I found Sophie studying one of her paintings, a family portrait unlike her old ones. In this version, she stood between me and Mark's family, while a smaller figure watched from a distance. "Is that Daddy?" I asked gently. She nodded. "Miss Lisa says it's okay to love someone from far away. And it's okay if they need to learn how to love better." I hugged her tight, thinking of my mother's letter, of Ryan's postcards, of Natalie's quiet redemption. "You're very wise, you know that?" "Like you," she said. "Tommy says his dad says you're the strongest person he knows." I smiled, remembering how I'd once thought strength meant winning at all costs. Now I understood. It meant having the courage to rebuild, to forgive without forgetting, to love without losing yourself. My phone buzzed again, another client booking. My new design business was growing, built on creativity and determination rather than corporate connections. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, shaped by choices made with clarity rather than revenge. Sophie returned to her painting, adding bright colors around all the figures, even the distant one. "Everyone needs a little light," she explained. I thought of Ryan, somewhere in Seattle, sending postcards to a daughter he was finally learning to love unselfishly. Of Natalie, seeking her own fresh start. Of my mother's letter, still waiting to be finished. Sometimes the happiest endings aren't about getting everything you thought you wanted. They're about discovering what you actually need and having the courage to build it yourself, one bright color at a time.
Hi, my name is Caroline, and I'm 24 years old. I grew up in a pretty affluent family. While my parents loved to flaunt their wealth and connections, my brother and I didn't. We liked to appear like we were comfortable and not filthy rich. We never tried to show off our connections, but we were very grateful for the opportunities that we had because of them. What I'm trying to say is I'm aware I'm rich, but I don't need anyone to know about it. Moving on, let me introduce you to my ex-husband, Derek. One day, my friend Sophia was super excited about a special event at our local restaurant. She begged me to go with her, saying it would be so much fun. I wasn't really interested, to be honest. All I wanted was to stay at home with my favorite book and get lost in its magical world. But Sophia can be pretty persuasive, so I finally gave in and agreed to go. When we got to the event, I saw a bunch of people happily chatting and sipping wine. They seemed to be having a good time, but I still wasn't feeling it. Then something unexpected happened. I was seated next to a guy named Derek, who was really friendly and told me about all the different wines we were tasting. Surprisingly, I found myself enjoying our conversation, and we exchanged numbers at the end of the event. Later that night, I got a call from Derek asking me if I wanted to go back to the restaurant during the weekend. I said yes, and we planned out a date. A few months passed, and Derek and I had been happily dating for a while. I was satisfied and couldn't believe I had found someone as amazing and caring as Derek. All my friends told me that I was extremely lucky that Derek was so loyal and attentive. One day, Derek took me out to a fancy dinner and asked me to dress nicely. During dinner, Derek had a band stand by our table and asked me to marry him. The ring he gave me had a huge diamond on it. I said yes. We began to plan a beautiful wedding. Derek had just started a new job with a big company named Taurus. Even though he was busy with his new job, Derek would always help me with the wedding planning. He would make sure I did not get stressed. He would even give me his opinion on the flower arrangements and the guest list for the wedding. Well, everything was going pretty great. There was only one issue. Every day when Derek came home from his new job, he seemed stressed and unhappy. He would talk about the pressure he felt and how much he wanted a promotion. I couldn't help but feel bad for him. I wanted to make him feel better, so I tried to help him manage his stress. You won't believe how strict and demanding Monica, my boss, is at work. She always finds faults in my work, no matter how hard I try. Oh, it must be tough for you. Is she making your job too difficult? You have no idea. It's like she's never satisfied. She's the one who'll decide if I get that promotion I want so badly. I need to impress her somehow. I know it sounds like you're under a lot of pressure. Is there anything I can do to help? I wish there was, but this promotion means so much to me. I want to be able to do so well that Monica will have no choice but to give me that promotion. That'll teach her not to mess with me. All right, now calm down. Just keep working hard and show her what you're capable of. I'm here to support you no matter what happens. I wanted to help him out so badly. I thought hard about what we could do, and an idea struck me. Babe, I've been thinking about how we could improve your relationship with your boss. What if we invite her to our wedding? It might leave a good impression on her and help with your promotion. I don't know. She's always so busy, and I'm not sure if she'd want to come. Come on, it's worth a try. I'm sure she'd appreciate the gesture. Plus, it would show her that you're serious about your commitment to the company. I don't think it's a good idea. Monica's not the type to attend weddings. She's always so focused on work. Well, you never know until you ask, right? It could make a difference. I appreciate your support, but I'd rather not involve her in our personal life. Let's just focus on enjoying our special day together, okay? All right, if you feel strongly about it. Just know that I want the best for you and our future together. One day, Derek came home looking surprisingly happy, and I couldn't help but feel puzzled. Babe, you won't believe what happened today at work. I managed to win over Monica. She's been so much nicer to me lately. Wow, babe, that's amazing. I'm really happy for you. But how did you suddenly get so close to her? It's incredible. I started helping her with some challenging projects, and she seemed to appreciate my dedication. Today, during a team meeting, she called me her favorite employee. That's quite a change. I mean, I know you've always worked hard, but this is unexpected. Do you think it's because of the promotion? It's possible. I think she's considering me seriously for it now. It's such a relief to finally be on good terms with her. Well, I'm proud of you. Keep up the great work, and who knows, maybe this promotion will be just around the corner. Even though I found it odd, I chose to forget about it and focus on the positive side. I was thrilled that Derek's efforts at work were paying off, and I believed inviting Monica to our wedding would make him look even better for the promotion. I thought everything was going well, and we were moving forward together. The big day finally arrived, and I couldn't contain my excitement. I put on the beautiful dress I had carefully chosen, and the venue looked like something out of a fairy tale with all the flowers and twinkling lights. As I walked down the aisle, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with happiness. Finally, the moment came when Derek and I tearfully exchanged our vows, promising to love and cherish each other forever. The whole room erupted in applause and cheers. But amid all the joy, I noticed a woman in the audience whom I didn't recognize. I soon realized that it was Derek's boss, Monica. Seeing her there made me feel a bit uneasy, but I tried not to let it bother me too much. After all, Derek had said they were on good terms now, so maybe she came to show her support. Monica was tall and had long, shiny black hair that cascaded down her shoulders. Her red dress made her look even more beautiful and confident. When she approached us to offer her congratulations, I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy given her history with Derek. Caroline, you truly made a stunning bride. Congratulations once again to both of you. Thank you, Monica. Monica also gave us an expensive gift for the wedding. It was really thoughtful of her. I wanted to show my appreciation for you both. Derek is an excellent employee, and he deserves all the best. That's very sweet of you. You've been a big support to Derek at work, and I'm grateful for that. I'm glad I could help. And how about the two of us grab lunch one day? Derek never stops talking about you, and I think I should get to know you too. That sounds lovely. Let's plan it soon. Great, I look forward to it. After the wedding, we enjoyed a luxurious honeymoon and newlywed bliss. I was over the moon with happiness to finally live with Derek and start our life together as a married couple. We even talked about having children soon, and I couldn't wait for our future together. However, a few weeks into our marriage, things began to change. Derek's behavior started to become distant and strange. He would come home late from work, and instead of being loving and attentive, he seemed annoyed and distant. He started scolding me for small things like not doing the dishes or laundry, even though he used to be helpful with these tasks before. I tried asking him what was wrong, but he either gave me short and rude answers or didn't respond at all. I felt confused and hurt, not knowing what I had done to cause this sudden change in him. It was heartbreaking to see the man I loved acting so differently towards me. and I desperately wanted to fix whatever was wrong in our marriage. Our marriage was still new, and I feared it would turn into a nightmare if I didn't find a way to fix things. So, determined to save our relationship, I decided to approach Derek one day when he returned from work. I was thinking, why don't we go to the special restaurant where we first met for lunch tomorrow? It might be a nice way for us to reconnect and talk about what's been bothering you. I don't have time for that. I have an important meeting tomorrow, and I can't waste time on silly dates. I just want to understand what's going on and support you. We used to share everything with each other. Can't we find some time to talk? I've got a lot on my plate right now. I'll figure it out on my own. All right, I understand. Just know that I'm here for you whenever you're ready to talk. I was sad but decided to keep quiet. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind filled with suspicions about Derek's strange behavior. Something just didn't feel right, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was keeping something from me. I knew he didn't have to work the next day since it was the weekend, but he had mentioned having a meeting. Unable to ignore my gut feeling, I decided to secretly follow him the next day when he left the house. I had to get to the bottom of things and find out what was going on. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched Derek pull up to the very restaurant I had suggested we visit for our special lunch. Memories of our happy times together flashed through my mind, and I felt a mix of shock and hurt. The restaurant looked just the same as it did back then, and seeing it brought back all those cherished moments. My hands trembled as I saw Derek step out of his car and walk towards the entrance. I couldn't believe my eyes. He was going to meet Monica, his boss, in the same place where we once shared our love and dreams. A small crowd of people were seated inside, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. I stood there, hidden from view, feeling like my whole world was crashing down. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers. It hurt so much to see him walking away from our marriage to be with someone else, especially in a place that held so much significance for us. My heart pounded loudly in my ears as I quietly followed Derek inside the restaurant, trying to remain unseen. I felt like a detective on a secret mission, but what I saw shattered my world. Derek looked around the restaurant before spotting Monica, and a smile spread across his face. I couldn't believe my eyes. He was meeting her just like they were old friends. My breath caught in my throat as I watched Derek walk over to Monica and give her a warm hug. My stomach churned with a mix of hurt and anger, seeing them so close and affectionate. They sat down across from each other, and I noticed Monica constantly touching Derek's arm, laughing at his jokes. It was like they were in their own little world, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. It was clear they were flirting, and the pain of betrayal washed over me like a tidal wave. I couldn't understand how Derek could do this to me, and in the very place where our love story began. I wanted to confront them, but I felt paralyzed, unable to move or speak. All I could do was stand there, my heart breaking as I witnessed the painful truth of Derek's affair with his boss. Just as I was about to turn away and leave the restaurant, I saw something that crushed me. Derek leaned in and kissed Monica right before my eyes. Rage and hurt surged through me, and without thinking, I strode over to them, demanding an explanation. Derek looked shocked to see me, but instead of remorse, he seemed surprised that I had found out. "How did you know I was going to be here?" "That's not the point. Why were you kissing Monica? She's your boss." "Oh, don't act so surprised. Derek and I have been together for weeks. He wanted that promotion, and I was more than willing to help. How could you betray me like this? It's not about you. Monica and I fell in love. I should have stopped the wedding, but I couldn't find the courage. I can't believe this. You both played with my emotions and lied to me." Oh, poor Caroline. It's not our fault you can't keep your husband satisfied. Get away from me. I don't want anything to do with either of you. As the painful truth sank in, everything started to make sense. I finally understood why Monica had never visited our house and why Derek's work attitude had suddenly improved. It was all because of their affair. Anger and hurt consumed me, and I couldn't bear to look at Monica's smug face any longer. Feeling overwhelmed, I impulsively picked up a glass of wine and threw it at her. The wine splashed across the table and on her. I shouted at her for breaking up our marriage. Derek stood up, defending Monica, and angrily told me to get out of his life, claiming he would be better off without me. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I left the restaurant in a rush, unable to bear the pain and humiliation any longer. Back at the house we once shared, I packed my belongings, my heart heavy with sorrow. I knew I couldn't stay with Derek after what he had done. With a heavy heart, I booked a flight back to my hometown, seeking comfort and support from my family during this devastating time. On the way back home, I couldn't stop crying because of what Derek did. I felt like my whole world had fallen apart, and I was so sad. When I got home, my parents saw how upset I was and asked me what happened. I felt like I needed to tell them everything, so I explained how I caught Derek cheating on me with his boss, Monica. My parents got really angry when they heard what he did. They couldn't believe that someone we trusted could hurt me like that. My mom and dad hugged me and said they would support me no matter what. They told me I deserved better and that we would do something about it. They were just as mad as I was, and together we decided to find a way to make things right. My mom asked me who the other woman was, and I told her it was Derek's boss, Monica. My mom thought for a while before asking me which company Derek and Monica worked at. I told them it was a tech company. By the name of Taurus, my mom jumped up from her seat and exclaimed that she knew the company. When I asked her to explain, she said that she and Dad had gotten my older brother Leonard a job at that company years ago. Leonard had begun working at that company at a relatively lower position because he wanted to. He worked hard and quickly climbed the corporate ladder, eventually becoming the CEO. I was so surprised to learn that my brother Leonard was already a CEO. Because he was much older than me, I had never really asked him about his job before, so it was a shock to hear about his success. My mom, seeing how hurt and angry I was, promised to help me get revenge on Derek and Monica for what they did to me. She immediately called Leonard and explained everything that had happened. I could hear the fury in his voice as he heard about how someone had treated his little sister so badly. Leonard wasted no time and asked my mom to give him Derek and Monica's details. With Leonard on my side, I felt a glimmer of hope and justice. I knew he would do whatever it took to make things right and punish Derek and Monica for their betrayal. Having my big brother stand up for me meant the world, and I felt a little less alone in my pain. I spoke to Leonard for almost an hour and recounted everything that Derek had told me about his job. Leonard said that while he had not heard of Derek within the company, he would look into the matter. Later that night, Leonard called me to tell me that he had found out about Derek and had a plan. He said that he had found pictures of Derek and Monica kissing on multiple CCTV cameras around the office building. He had even found evidence of them stealing company money to use on their dates and to buy each other presents. Oh, I was relieved that Leonard had found evidence to support me. Leonard asked me to come to the office building the next day. I was confused about the request, but I decided to go. So the next day, I went to the office building and made my way to Leonard's office. He had a serious look on his face, and he told me he had called for a special meeting with all of the employees. I was curious and a bit nervous about what was going to happen. Leonard explained his plan to fire Derek and Monica in a humiliating way for what they did to me. My heart raced, wondering how it would unfold. We headed to the meeting room, and all the employees gathered in front of a stage where Derek and Monica stood together. When Derek spotted me across the room, his face turned from confusion to anger. He walked over and demanded to know why I was there and how I got in. I stood my ground and firmly told him that it was none of his business and that I had come for some important work. Just then, Leonard stepped onto the stage. He greeted everyone and started to talk about the office policy against dating coworkers. I could see Derek becoming even more uneasy as he realized his secret was about to be exposed to everyone. Leonard asked everyone to look at the screen behind him. Oh, my heart raced with anticipation. Derek and Monica seemed puzzled as they glanced at each other, probably wondering what was happening. Suddenly, the screen displayed pictures from the office CCTV cameras showing them kissing. Gasps filled the room as everyone saw the truth right before their eyes. Monica looked shocked and panicked, trying to rush towards the stage to stop the embarrassing evidence from being shown. But Leonard acted quickly, asking the security team to prevent her from interfering. I felt a mix of emotions. Anger towards Monica for what she did to me and relief that the truth was finally exposed. Leonard continued to speak firmly about the consequences of their actions, making it clear that there was no place for such behavior in the workplace. Derek and Monica were left standing there, exposed and humiliated in front of their colleagues. He proceeded to disclose the fact that Derek was a married man and had been in a relationship for a long time. He told everyone present about how Derek not only lied to his wife, but also to the company by stealing money and valuable assets to be able to afford a relationship with Monica. Monica began crying and wailing as she denied the proof of her relationship with Derek and begged Leonard for a second chance in front of everyone. When Derek tried to stop her, she pushed him away in anger and denied knowing him at all. Leonard announced that both Derek and Monica were to be immediately fired. They also had to pay a compensatory fine to the company for breaking the rules multiple times. I stood in the corner of the room, enjoying myself. It gave me satisfaction to see the fear on Derek's face. Derek approached me and tried to explain himself. I have to admit that I already knew about your brother. It's the reason I even started dating you, but I promise I changed. I need your help. Please just ask your brother to give me a job back. You used me. Our whole relationship was just a means for your career. I know I messed up, but I love you. I want to fix things. Love, it was all lies. You betrayed me. It's not that simple. We fell in love, and I couldn't find a way out. Leonard will make sure you never find another job in your field. You don't deserve any sympathy. You shattered my trust, and now you'll have to face the consequences. It was like a punch to the gut knowing that our whole relationship had been built on lies. It wasn't easy to face the truth about someone I once loved, but I knew that I deserved better. After the difficult days that followed, I focused on healing and rebuilding my life. I knew I deserved someone who would truly love and respect me. As time passed, I grew stronger and more confident. I followed my passions and found a job I loved. I surrounded myself with people who valued and cherished me for who I am. Life continued, and though the scars remained, I was determined to find happiness and love once again. I knew that someday the right person would come into my life and show me what true love means. When that day comes, I'll be ready to welcome it with an open heart and a strong spirit.